Welcome to another episode of the Tough Stuff Podcast.
Be sure to like, love, share, or subscribe wherever you may be watching or listening, because we believe God wants to bring encouragement and hope to people through these stories.
Breezy Bree, welcome to the pod.
Excited to be here.
Breanne Franks, you're my closest friend. Whenever I was working on this project, I thought, I feel like you need to be on the podcast. And here's why. You are somebody who is quietly resilient. Like, you don't complain about things that you go through. I feel like that's how I live. And you're well aware of that as my closest friend. But
I process outwardly.
Outwardly. Yeah, okay, there. Thank you. I appreciate the grace in that statement. But when I look at your life and the things that you have gone through, I don't see struggle. And so that's always been inspirational to me, is like, you've been through tough stuff. Plug. You've been through some really tough stuff, and you don't even look like it. And so another thing I want to say is, as my closest friend, you've inspired me in that way, but also you have been the greatest friend to me. Are you crying?
You're about to make me cry.
You never cry. Or what's going on? I can think of all of the hard things that I've been through in the last, 5, 6, 7 years. And I can remember where I was when I called you to cry or to, just to vent. And you were the truest friend. And so you've inspired me in that way too. And I'm excited to hear from you today as we talk about a pretty significant event in your life. Now, why don't you go ahead, for those who don't know who you are, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us about your family, your kids, and then we'll get into it.
Okay. Well, that was sweet intro. I guess it's different when you're like looking at me.
I know, we're kind of like in this, if they could only see, we're in my living room by ourselves, looking at each other, and it's really close.
Kid toys, it's cute.
Yeah. Okay, tell us about you. Who's Breanne Franks?
Okay, well, I am married to Terry.
Terry, shout out.
14 years married. We have 3 kids. Eli, he's 11. Mila is 9. And Zuri turned 5 last week.
5. And tell us kind of like the dynamic of your kids.
So Eli is steady. He's a rule follower.
Okay.
He's so me.
Gotta love those.
Yes. He's just the most gentle, kind, like really a good big brother to his sisters. He's got some tough siblings.
Stuff.
Yeah. Which I think it'll make him a better, dad and husband later on in life. But anyway, Mila, she is a firecracker. If anyone knows her. She brings a lot of joy to rooms.
Yes.
She is going to be herself through and through.
Tell it like it is.
Everywhere. School, church, walking in strangers' homes. She's just going to help herself in your kitchen. She's going to,
Mila.
She's authentically herself.
I love that.
So.
And then tell us about Zuri.
Zuri is, she's the baby. She is, she's also a firecracker, to be honest. That's why they butt
heads.
She has a strength about her that, her and Mila are both so strong because of, I think, where they came from.
Yes.
But Zuri has a lot of energy. She's got lots of friends. She loves life. She takes, life and just runs with it.
Now, Zuri is adopted.
Yes.
So that's part of her story that's interesting when compared to Mila and Eli. But today, I wanted to talk about your journey with Mila, your middle child, because you and Terry and your family walked through something extremely unexpected with Mila. And so I want to dive in. Like, I want you to take us into that story, and I want to just hear all the details of what happened. And I know a lot of people, the thing is, a lot of people probably know what happened, but because of how you like live so composed, I feel like people may not know the details of all the things that you guys have had to walk through with her back then and even today. And so why don't you break down Mila's story and tell us how that went?
Yeah, so we had our son, and he was typical pregnancy. He grew for the most part like a healthy, typical child. And so when we got ready to have Mila, same thing. Pregnancy was great. I actually love being pregnant. And I love birthing children. Like, I love childbirth.
Tell everybody, like.
I think if people know me, they know that. But I really do. I enjoy pregnancy. I enjoyed both of my children's births. And so very healthy pregnancy, no issues. And then, we went to have her, and the day was fine. Like, completely.
So second child, y'all are in the hospital. Everything's fine.
Yep.
Nothing has been detected on any
we
tests.
had all the tests. So some people, choose to not know. We had all the tests done. So nothing came back abnormal.
And what tests, like what all did they test for?
So at the anatomy scan, and
yeah.
like all the blood tests that you can choose to do, we did them. We chose like all those genetic testing things, and nothing came back abnormal at all.
Wow. Okay.
So went to have her, completely like amazing childbirth. I don't know how else to say it, but it really was. It was.
You're kind of developing this weird reputation on our podcast.
Okay, well, some women.
I'm kidding.
I'm excited about that part, but just unmedicated childbirth, and I say that because that'll come later in the story. But had her. She ate perfectly fine. All her her weight checks, all that was fine. The day that she was born. The next day is when they noticed that her temp was dropping a little bit, not enough to worry anybody, but they put her under the warmers, but in my room, so still no concern. We were just like, oh, maybe she's tiny, She was 5 pounds, and then throughout that day, just up and down, her temp would drop, and then it would be better. And so, but no one was concerned. So they did the normal, the newborn screening where they prick the baby's heel and all that. And so they told us, we could go home. So we went home. And since it was our second, I immediately noticed it was different than Eli. Now, I didn't think it was
drastically different.
But when I was feeding her, I was breastfeeding. And so when I would go to wake her up, she would never wake up. I would have to unwrap her, do a sternum rub for medical people. And she would never latch well, and she would never really wake up. And so the day after, or 2 days later, we go to just a normal checkup that they do after you get back from the hospital.
Like the 1 week
the
visit?
pediatrician.
Yeah, okay.
And so they noticed that her temp was still not great. They were like, she's losing a lot of weight. And so
what was her temperature?
97, which is not, I don't think it's concerning, but it definitely is not good for a
newborn.
2-day-old. Yeah. And so we went back every day to the doctor to do a weight check and temp check.
Wow.
So we went to our pediatrician every day up until that 7th day. So that whole week, I remember waking up, having to wake her up every 2 hours because they were worried about her weight, and she still would not wake up. They thought oh, maybe she's not latching well. Maybe, they really, nobody was overly concerned at this point.
Wow.
So 7th day, your 1 week or 1 week checkup. We go in, and of course our pediatrician's not there. And so the person that had been knew our story, the everyday check, she wasn't there. But another doctor saw us and did a weight check, did a temp check, and they were like, her temperature is way too low. Mm-hmm. So they get on the phone with all these, the hospitals, our pediatrician. They're like, what are we going to do? She's got to go to the emergency room. And I was like, what? I'm by myself because
normal 1 week checkup.
Yes. And we had done this 6 other times, and I was like, Terry, you don't have to go to this one.
Yeah.
There's no need.
Which makes total sense.
Yeah. So they come back in the room, and they're like, you have to choose what hospital you want to go to, but she's got to go right now. At the time, for medical people, her rectal temp was 95, which is low. So we pick a hospital. I'm like, I don't know what hospital to go to. So we're just
pick the closest one. Yeah.
So we pick one and we go, and when we go, Terry meets me, and of course that drive felt like forever.
Yeah, and you're by yourself.
I'm by myself.
Driving her.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm like, what could happen? What do they think's going on?
Yeah, you're like, what is wrong with her? Is she gonna make all of those questions?
All the things.
Yeah.
And what are even the possibilities? Mm-hmm. So I get to the hospital, and there's a team waiting.
Wow.
I don't know who they are. They're just nurses, and I think the hospitalist was there. Just so many people, and they're doing all this stuff to her, but then they're asking me all these questions.
And you're still by yourself?
I think
Terry had gotten there.
Yeah, Terry gotten there. And so they're asking me all about her birth, my pregnancy. I think at the time they were like, maybe she was in the womb too long. Maybe the effects of the medicine. I was like, that's what I was saying, unmedicated birth, because I didn't have medicine. So that wasn't a thing.
So I imagine the amount of fear, because you have all of these medical professionals rushing to figure out a problem that they don't know the answer to.
Oh, yeah.
And she seems to be declining. Mm-hmm. So then it's this anxiety of they don't even know yet, and we don't even know yet. And is she going to be okay?
Oh, for sure. I think I didn't really know the magnitude of it until that same day. They were like, we're going to have to do a spinal tap. Now, they had done so many blood draws, so many different tests, but I was like, for some reason, the spinal tap was significant to me. Because I was like, you're going to take, I think at the time she was upper 4 pounds. But I was like, you're going to take this baby and spinal tap her when you don't have a clue what's going on. And so I remember Terry and I both were just devastated at the spinal tap. So we broke down. That was the moment first that we were like, this is real.
Yeah. Wow.
So after that day, days just passed, and every day they would come in and they would do a different test, because it was a mystery. Every doctor that came in, they were like, we're testing this. Let's test her thyroid. Let's test her different things I never even heard of.
Right.
And so every different doctor would come in, and they'd want to test something else. Meanwhile, they're still wanting me to breastfeed her so that she doesn't lose that skin-to-skin time, all those things. And so I am pumping in a NICU bathroom every 2 hours to feed my on top of the anxiety and the stress and worry of my child living, I'm also having to heal from a birth.
Yes.
And my
Let's not
hormones
forget
are crazy.
that you have just given birth.
Yeah, all the things. And so I think also I was kind of mad that I wasn't getting the typical, I'm at home with my baby, rocking her, and all those things. Because we weren't able to hold her because her temp was it was never stable.
Wow.
So when you would touch her, she was always cold.
Wow.
So we couldn't take her out of her it was an incubator. I don't know a medical term for it, but so we couldn't take her out and feed her. So we literally put our hands in the thing and feed her at the bottle like this.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that was wild. And I was just frustrated that like these doctors can't figure this out.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
at the time.
Yes.
And so, you know, time went on. This is now 1 week, 2 week. And they said I think your due date was wrong. And I was like frustrated because I knew we were trying to have a child. I knew my due date. I was followed. You were
calculated.
Yeah, like, and I had all the prenatal appointments, and so they just kept saying they basically felt like they kept blaming me, and I was like,
so here you are.
All the things,
yes,
like, I know
you're scared to death. You're already worried, and now you're feeling like, is it my fault?
Yeah,
you know.
Oh yeah, so much guilt. I'm like, would she have been okay if she would have been later in my pregnancy? Because she was 38 weeks, but like, what if she went to 40? Was she been okay? So all these things were like, yeah, what did I do wrong? So I think the thing they were riding on was my due date was wrong, or she had sepsis. And so as the test came back, like, nope, she doesn't have sepsis. Nope, her thyroid's fine. No, all these things kept coming back. And finally, there was one doctor that was like, this is not right. We got to figure this out. Like, I'm going to make it my mission to figure it out. And so I was like, thank you. Like, you know, I mean, you really develop like this relationship with so many of those medical people. You trust them with your children's lives.
Yes.
You know? And I don't know what they're doing. So, anyway, long story short, she tested everything that was on the newborn screening that you originally get tested for in the hospital at birth. She retested those, and we didn't get that back for a week. So instead of staying at the hospital, they were like, why don't you just go home with this child that's sick? And I was like, what? I'm just so confused.
Yeah.
So scared because I'm taking this child now that's never been at home with me. Well, I'm taking her home and could possibly not do well.
Yes.
You know, not make it.
Right.
And so we get home and she's still not well. I don't know. I don't know where my head was at that point, but I know that I was just desperate to figure it out, you know? And 1 week later, after we got home from the hospital, they called. I remember exactly where I was, exactly like the feeling, but it was at night, and the doctor, the actual neurologist, called and said, I think she has this, and do not Google it. It's terrible. Do not look anything up. Do not, just don't do it. And you need to go to New Orleans first thing in the morning. So I was like, okay, freaking out. And of course, Googling, because that's who I am.
Yeah, that sounds like you.
I was such a researcher. And that next morning was wild. Like, I felt very chaotic, but also like peaceful. If that makes sense.
I was going to say, like, in the midst of all of this, you like, your gifting is you're a very strong, independent woman, but there is also a side of this story where your strength could only come from God.
For sure.
Like the peace that you had. I cannot imagine the drive to New Orleans.
I know.
You know what I mean? Just getting there.
Chaotic. I remember that. Like, our pediatrician was calling us. We were like, where do we go? Who do we talk to? They're like, just talk to this geneticist. And I was like, what is that? Just like all the things. I remember Terry and I praying on the way there, and he was like, it's completely out of our control. There is nothing we can do at this point.
Wow.
And so as much as like the church and our family and all these people like came around us and supported us, like ultimately no one could do anything.
Right.
Except the medical professionals, and who we could rely on was God, really. And so I just remember like blaring worship music. We had like specific songs that had like helped us through the hospital stays and stuff. So we put that on and we have to surrender this. There's nothing we can do at this point.
And that's not to say that you didn't, cry or have breakdowns. It's like you guys allowed space for those moments too, knowing that God was there with you even in those moments.
Oh yeah.
It's like that. It's not that you thought God's got it and everything's good and I'm not going to look at the bad. It's like, this is hard. God, you have to do something. We trust you, and you allow yourself to feel, but then also you allow yourself to have the peace that you need.
Oh yeah. That first hospital stay where we didn't know what was going on, I remember people coming in and they just be like, I'm so sorry. And honestly, there were moments that I did break down. Usually it was not when people were there, just because I felt like
That's the difference between you and me. You're gonna wait. You're gonna wait till everybody's gone. I'm gonna wait till they walk in the door, and I was gonna cry.
Yeah, I just feel like I have to stay. There has to be some level of control for me. So I wasn't in control of her part, like her story. I wasn't in control of the doctors, but like I could break down and process emotionally with Terry at night when no one else was there. Like I felt
you were
like
in
that
control.
was my, my space.
Talk about emotionally mature. That is like, that's amazing, honestly.
Maybe it is also like, I just don't want to cry in front of people. I don't know.
Okay.
But I just felt, I appreciated the people sitting in that space with us, though. They felt that with me. So I really appreciated that. Like, we had so many visitors. Oh, like, without our church family, honestly, it would have just been such a different experience.
Wow.
Yeah. But there was just, I had to fight as the mom and as the person that's like, no, we're not going to get this test back today. We are going to get this back today. Like I felt like I had to fight for every step. So really to process in the middle of like the day and stuff, you don't have enough
time.
room.
It's like time. You went to war and you had to fight.
Yes. And so when we got to the hospital in New Orleans, that was another overwhelming of like everybody was there. Now you have these like very specialized doctors. This is like big time now. And so they tell us this diagnosis. And
can you say the name?
Yes.
Are you waiting for a specific?
No. Okay. They told us it was methylmalonic acidemia.
Okay.
And I'm like, what is that? No one, still to this day when I say it, nobody knows what it is.
Yeah. It's a long word.
Yes. And so the doctor and a team, because it's a teaching hospital. So not only are there geneticists in there, there's probably 10 other doctors in there. So you have this team, you're like, my child has something wrong with them. Not, this is just my thoughts, but something wrong with them, and they are going to deal with this for life. And now I'm getting all this information. And of course I'm Googling, and it looks terrible. It looks really grim, if I'm being honest. It just looks like, she won't be able to eat regular food ever.
Yeah, I was about to say, can you explain just very simply what that diagnosis meant to her and her body and then y'all's future?
So at the time, so this is 2014, at the time, this is what it looked like, or what we were told. No regular food. So her body cannot break down the specific acids in protein.
Okay.
So for the medical people, she cannot process certain amino acids, which is protein, basically. but her body rejects it. So it is poison to her body.
So protein in general is poisonous to her body. Okay.
So when I was doing all that time in the NICU, when I was breastfeeding her, all the
feeding her.
formula, I'm feeding her, and it's killing her.
Wow.
So
you think you in that moment are like hurrying to feed her.
Oh, yeah.
And you think I'm saving her life, but in reality, what you didn't realize is that you were giving her protein, the very thing that could kill her.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So the one thing I was like, I'm in control of this. Like, I can absolutely, like, at least feed her. I can give her the nutrients that her body, what I thought was.
Yeah. Wow.
In reality, I wasn't.
I cannot imagine.
So, yeah, so her body can't break down the protein. And so at the time, we were like, what, she's never going to eat? Like, all these things are running through your head. You're like, oh, she won't be able to have cake at a birthday party.
Yeah.
She won't be able to have, just different things. And so it's like those little things that get you, like, that kind of stuff.
The things that would make it not normal.
Yeah. Like, she's going to have to, go to school and not be able to eat regular school lunch. Like, the little things that just make you sad for that. But anyway, so at the time, that's what we knew about that specific genetic disorder. And that is on the newborn screening. So really, we should have found out earlier.
Wow.
And we just didn't. And that's okay. I had to process that because I was like, why didn't we?
Yeah, we could have caught that.
Yeah, why didn't we find out at 3 days old? Why didn't we, all the whys, all the what ifs.
All the what ifs.
There was a lot of questioning, but I'll get to that later. There was a lot of questioning of like, why did you do it this way, God? Like,
which is so normal and reassuring to hear that even in hard things, God is okay with us questioning him. Like, he's okay with us putting him to the test. I think it's inspiring that you allowed yourself to go there.
Oh, yeah.
Without like forfeiting your faith altogether,
Yeah. Oh, there was a lot of like, why did you do this? Like, why did it have to be this way? Why, and I think he would rather you wrestle with it and come to terms with it and know that, like, ultimately, this is my will.
Yes.
I'm going to show you the purpose in this. So wrestle with it and then get to a place where you're okay to sit with it.
Yes.
And, like, rather than just never processing it at all.
Stuffing it down and letting it,
I could still be dealing with it right now, if not.
Wow.
And so I felt like that particular hospital stay, New Orleans, was a lot of answered questions, but also scary stuff. Like, we would have meetings every day, if not every couple days, about like, what kind of formula does she need now? She needs special formula. I can't just go to Target or Walmart and get formula for her. Like, we had to do special order formula from a store. From a pharmacy. Where do I go to this pharmacy? Where do I get this it's just, now I'm like thrown into this
new
world.
lifestyle.
Yeah, like I know nothing about this stuff, and really no parent does until they're. Yeah, so we were in that family meeting, that room. It's us, Terry and I, a team of doctors and nurses. It's very intimidating.
Wow.
And they begin to explain what she has. And it is terrifying because you're like, what are these things? What is this?
Remind me the name. Say it again.
It's methylmalonic acidemia.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's like all these things of like how her life's going to look, the medicine she's going to have to take, it's really a list of all the things she won't be and all the things she can't do. And that's just because they're a team of doctors.
And they're having to give you
facts.
Yeah. Well, take us into that room. You and Terry are standing there with all of those doctors. You're hearing, very discouraging information Like, talk to me about what's going on in both of your minds and your hearts.
At the time, I do remember feeling very overwhelmed because I was like, what does this mean as a mom now? Like, how am I worthy to parent this child? Like, do I have what it takes, you know? And they had, there were there were multiple types of this particular genetic disorder, but the doctor told us, you need to hope for this particular type. It's an easier life, you know, all the things, there's more medicine. And so we had everybody praying for this other type.
Specific prayer.
Like pray that she doesn't have this other type.
Yeah.
And, you know, in that room, we found out that it was the type we didn't want.
Oh, wow.
At the time, we didn't know anything. So we're just going off the doctor. And so, but little did we know, really God knew. Because ultimately the type that she has is a little more easier to manage. The kids.
So it was actually a blessing. And it was something that you didn't even know to pray. Nope. In fact, like, you were praying the wrong prayer.
Yeah.
Talk about the sovereignty of God in that hospital room.
Yeah.
Where you think you're praying for something and he knows better than we do. Wow.
We were praying for what I thought our will should be. You know, like I was trying to control the will of God.
This will be easier.
Yeah. And ultimately God was like, no, I know. Like, I know this is the will of this is our, you know, your will. And he absolutely took care of us through all of that, because I was devastated that we had the type that we had. And I had to now call all these people that were praying for us,
your family, friends, church family,
like everybody, and tell them, like, despite what we prayed, it's the opposite. And it was a little disheartening. I mean, come to find out now, you know, it's not. And so after that meeting, it felt like a weight had been lifted, because we knew now, like, the unknown was known. But now I felt overwhelmed, because now I'm grieving the fact that, like, I'm not going to have that typical experience, like, with my baby girl going home and, you know, doing the typical things that, like, a 1-year-old would do. It's, you know. And so you go through that grief process, and at the end of the day, though, after we were discharged from that particular hospital stay, we decided to, there was a community here, actually in Louisiana, that have kids with this.
And it's a rare disorder.
It's very rare. And so at the time in 2014, there were only like a couple thousand kids or adults and kids that we knew of that had it.
Across the country.
Across the world.
Across the world. Wow.
And there might have been more, but at the time we only had that community. And they reached out to us, and really, like, I learned so much from them, you know, a community.
I bet you felt validated by
like,
that.
People understand. Because a lot of times, like, even now to this day, people are like, oh, she's better.
Yeah.
Oh, you know,
because it's kind of an invisible illness. Like, you can't see it.
You can't see it.
And if you look at Mila, I mean, she's wild and crazy. She, you know, she's fun. She doesn't look like she has what she has.
You can't see the fight that she has had to get up to this point. You know, and it has been. It's been lots of doctor's appointments, therapies. She's had every type of therapy you could think of since she was in that hospital. So 2 months old to now, she still fights for everything she does. Schoolwork. I mean, she is resilient. And, you know, come to find out, so that type we were praying against, they had new treatments come, and now her genetic disorder is manageable. So she can have protein. She has special medicine that we get from, you know, pharmacies. And despite a lot of things along the road that's been tough, the medicine, shortages and all these things, like, at the end of the day, hers is manageable. And That doesn't mean that it doesn't come without a fight.
Well, her medicine keeps her alive, like you've said to me before. And there have been seasons I've seen you having to fight with pharmacies because they'll just try to discontinue a medication, for whatever reason. And you're having to fight for her because it keeps her alive.
Yeah.
I mean, the resilience that you've had to walk in and God's partnered with you in has been amazing.
It's overwhelming. You'll go through like times, months or a year, and you're like, okay, I got this. Like, it's okay. Like, she's going to be okay. And then something like that happens where like we run out of medicine because the pharmacy decides it's not important anymore to make it. And I'm scrambling trying to figure out like, where are we going to get this?
Yeah.
This keeps children alive.
Because in their mind, they're like, it's not. There's not enough demand.
There's not enough.
But to you,
a lot.
it's like one child is enough.
Yeah,
because it's your baby.
Absolutely. So you have to fight with, insurance doesn't pay for it, but I've fought insurance companies, I've fought pharmacies, I've met people in parking lots to get medicine.
And I don't know if people realize you're an Enneagram 9 and you're a fighter, which is hilarious. But I guess you'll do it on the behalf of your child.
Oh, absolutely.
Not if it were about you.
Right. But, I mean, God gave her to Terry and I. And we have to steward her well.
That's so good.
And, I can't control a lot of things about her life. I cannot control that, she's got severe developmental delays. And all these things I can't control. But I can be the best mother, and Terry can be the best father that we can be, And that means fighting with the insurance company.
Yes.
Or fighting with a pharmacy or a doctor or whatever.
Now, Mila, in that family meeting, they told you she would not walk or run or talk. Did you say?
Yeah. They said that she probably wouldn't be able to do those
And
things.
if you know her now, I mean, that is hilarious even just to think about because she's loud.
Yep.
She's funny.
She has no social awareness.
She's honestly, if you know her, she's your favorite kid ever. She's my favorite kid ever. She is just who she is. And she's not only walking, but running. And so didn't you tell me at one point that somebody had a dream about Mila?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so in the hospital, all these unknowns, and we're just terrified. God spoke to us in different ways. And so if he couldn't get us this way, he was going to use someone else. And so he dropped worship songs on our heart, or he'll, this particular person had a dream that she was running in a field about 3 or 4 years old, he said. And years later, about 3 or 4, she was running in a grassy field, and I took a video of it, and I was like,
this is it.
Yep.
Wow.
He got us.
It's so amazing to me how, we could be in our worst moment, in our hardest time, and, God can perform miracles in a number of ways. But I think so often we overlook the miracle of being able to stand. Like the miracle of, God was with us in that hospital room. God was there, and he gave us a dream from somebody that we could imagine in our head and hold on to, and like an anchor for our soul,
Yeah.
I just think that it's so cool to me that while y'all are in that hospital, there's this tension of, we know God's in control. This is so hard. We're breaking down, but we're having faith. But we're, somebody had a dream.
Yeah.
Mila's going to run one day.
Yep.
And it's just like that tension of nothing has to be perfect. I don't have to pretend like everything is good and amazing. God's got this. And I think, that's good in certain moments. But you know what? In that moment, it was hard.
Oh.
And so
Yeah.
the tension of, this is hard, but I believe God can do it. And he gave me this dream. I mean, that's got to be so reassuring even just for a second in that hospital as you're receiving bad news after bad news. I can imagine,
Oh, yeah. I always I think of it kind of this way. Mila might not get her complete healing on earth, but I see her miracles in her everyday life. Because if she wasn't supposed to talk, well, then I need to, praise God when she's talking too much.
Yeah.
Or, she might never walk.
And that girl
or
can talk.
Yeah, she might never walk. And she's running around screaming. It gives you the opportunity to say, thank you.
Yes.
And I just think that if you put your perspective of God and you see that he really does want what's best for you. It's not what we always see for ourselves, but she's taught me how to have more faith. She's taught me how to trust more, how to rely on people.
How to not care what anybody thinks.
Yeah. I'm we'll go to Walmart and she's just telling people that, I don't know, just crazy stuff, And I'm like, you know what?
Never meets a stranger.
If you only knew.
If you only knew.
If you only knew her story.
Wow. Wow. That's so inspiring to me. Just to watch you and Terry and how you guys have walked, not only back then, but even now, as you're facing challenges like in school, and she's in therapy, and she's becoming a young girl, and she's growing up.
Ready.
It's just it makes me so proud, and just to know her and how unique she is, and to think that Mila would not be the same if she were born a typical baby. Yeah. She is amazing because of her differences. And, one thing I love about Mila is the joy that she has and the joy that she brings a room. Yeah. Because if Mila Rose walks into a room, it is like she commands the room. Everybody's watching her. She's a mess.
She is. No, she really is. I hear that all the time, that, I love Mila. She's, our favorite at school or church. And she gets away with a lot because people know her story. And I just think that her life, and I hope this, because if we go through this and people aren't pointed to Jesus, and if they aren't affected by it, in an eternal way, then what's the point, And so I hope that they look at her life and our life and see that despite everything, that we rely on him and he's always had us,
Wow. Even when the reports were bad.
Well, shots every night, her medicine, they're tough. These are tough moments.
And she doesn't like those.
Oh, they're terrible. Yeah, she cried last night. Mama, please don't, please. Why do I have to do this?
Every single night. But it keeps her alive.
Yep.
Wow.
Keeps her alive, and I'm grateful for medicine, and I'm grateful that we have, the medical field, but it's still tough. We still have appointments that are hard. But if we just see God in those little moments, and I have miracles on my phone, notes. Oh, wow. So I can look back at and see okay, he did that for us, or he brought us from that place to this place. Wow. So that I remember in the tough moments.
That's such a good practice, man. I feel like we all need to incorporate that so we never forget the little things that God has done. It's hard
in the tough moments, but if you remember where you came from or what he's brought you through, and so I just keep a little note.
I love that.
On my note app.
Okay, so I love your story, and Terry and Mila, y'all's story. I feel like it can help so many people. So I want to ask you this question. What would you say to another mom who's maybe in a similar position? Maybe they're in the NICU and they can't figure out what their child has yet, or they're fighting every day, or, they're going to all those doctor visits, or what would you say to another mom in that position?
Yeah. There's so many things, but I would just say never give up. What you have is needed. Your child needs you. No one else is gonna fight as hard as a mom or as a parent, you know? And you're gonna look back one day and you're gonna think like you don't have a lot of control over a lot of things in those situations, but the one thing you can do is to wake up, is to fight every day for the person that you're fighting for.
That's good.
And so just never ever give up and just be resilient, you know? And keep your eyes on God, and he really will see you through. You'll look back and think, God, how did
we get through this?
Yeah.
Only God.
Yep.
Wow. I love it. Well, as we land the plane, this has been such a fun conversation. But if you know somebody who has a similar situation or has been through something similar, make sure you share this with them. We just would love to get this out to people. Our heart in this is just to encourage people. You know, we just want people to have hope. And so share this with somebody. Maybe you need to subscribe on our YouTube channel or follow us on Apple or Spotify. You know the drill. And like we always say on this podcast, life can be tough, but God is still so good.